Welcome to the Rare Wellness Podcast. The pressures of this modern life, society, and world often steer us toward unhealthy lifestyles. Wellness is a rare treasure hidden in a maze of daily challenges. In this podcast, we will illuminate uncommon pathways to health and vitality, exploring cutting-edge ideas in regenerative longevity and performance medicine, all delivered in bite-sized segments of 5 minutes or less. This podcast is brought to you by the Northwest Center for Regenerative Performance Medicine, located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Visit us online at www.nwc4rm.com. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only and not intended for medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional for any medical concerns or treatment. Today, we're diving into the critical role nutrition plays in building and maintaining muscle. We're joined today by Dr. Andrew Mock, professor of family medicine, preventive medicine, longevity medicine, and world's strongest man of California. Am I getting that right, Dr. Mock?
Yep, California's strongest man. Actually won it 3 times. So we'll see how the title goes in a month, but yeah.
Thanks for joining us again today. And we're talking about an important topic that's on a lot of people's minds, maintaining muscle mass and particularly being able to build muscle as we age. Last episode, we talked about exercise in a way to build and maintain. Today, talk a little bit about nutrition. Just turning it over to you, what is your advice on the importance of nutrition when it comes to building and maintaining muscle?
Absolutely. So what I would say is the longer you live, the better the chances that you will have more muscle mass by making nutrition changes. So in general, even though some of the higher body weights that, professional athletes or professional strength athletes have can be achieved by living longer, I would say that most people should focus on nutrition for health reasons first, and then secondarily for performance reasons. I say that as a professional strongman that has had to make those changes for the long game in mind.
Break that down a little bit more for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at the US dietary guidelines, they start out by saying you should eat in caloric balance. And that's rule number 1. Total calories, what is it at the end of the day? If you want to gain weight, you need to eat more calories than you're burning. If you want to lose weight, you need to burn more calories than you're eating. And so that is the first place that I start, is with someone's total calories. An excellent tool is the NIH Body Weight Planner. You can actually click expert mode and type in all of your body metrics and your goal weight and how long you want to take to get there. And it will spit out a general amount of total calories that you need as a place to start.
How do you break that down as far as, there's all kinds of thoughts on fat, protein, and carb ratios?
So, it's very funny when you look at things like professional cycling. They spent all of this time doing this research saying, this person burns fat more, burns carbohydrates more. And then ultimately they got back to, it came down to personal preference as far as how well someone did with a different fat and carbohydrate intake. And the reason that I list those 2 is because I think the second most important part after calories when we're talking about muscle performance is going to be adequate dietary protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis.
And what is adequate dietary protein?
It's a range. It is absolutely a range. There's going to be some difference in individual response based off your age, your training history, whether or not you're at a caloric deficit, whether or not you have other chronic health conditions that may make it harder for you to build muscle. But we're looking for somewhere between 1.2 and 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And if you wanted just one number as a place to start, it's going to be 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which I think is about 0.72 grams of protein per pound of body weight.
Now, is that ideal body weight?
It's a great question. So what we typically recommend is someone that does have a higher BMI, especially if they have higher body fat mass. We might use something like their goal weight
Uh-huh.
they're trying to get to. Otherwise, the numbers can be quite high, and they probably don't need to be that way. But how I use it clinically is I might use somebody's adjusted ideal body weight to calculate that number.
And even at that range, I think you said 1 point, was it 1.6?
1.6 grams of protein
Yeah,
per kilogram of body weight per day.
that's a lot of protein.
It is. Yeah. So it's actually double what is the recommended daily allowance, which is zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram. But we have to remember that that's the amount that's determined to prevent protein malnutrition. And very interesting, only one study for that determining that recommended daily allowance of the RDA included older adults. So it's a
Mm.
very important part of the conversation because that is the most important population that we're wanting to prevent that muscle mass loss by stimulating it with both the strength training as well as the adequate dietary protein.
So just, my personal journey towards having a bit more of a diet in alignment with the type of body that I want to have and trying to build muscle, I've really struggled with getting that much protein without these guys. So, and I also don't love, highly processed
Mhm.
foods. And so, I'm torn between processed protein bars, protein shakes, and just continually failing to meet those numbers.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, protein supplements, they are one of the very few health promoting ultra processed foods that we can use, but they're a very powerful tool in the toolbox, largely because they are convenient. Right? So especially if you're in healthcare, walking out of the door, you're barely even grabbing the breakfast that's in the fridge as you're going, and maybe you're drinking it on the way. It's very convenient to have that liquid calorie version of it, like with a protein supplement or a homemade smoothie or something like that. So in general, I feel that most people will benefit from a protein supplement purely because it's convenient and it's a
Sure.
lot easier to get it in than it is if you're only focusing on the whole foods.
Going to the other end of the population, I've got my middle daughter decided that she was vegetarian very early in life. My wife is a pretty much eats meat and vegetables, and so we have a very diverse meal planning sessions at the beginning of each. But with my daughter, you look at eggs, legumes, tofu. Those are kind of the main protein sources that we look at for her. And there's not a ton of protein in those sources. So using those, it'd be very hard to get to the protein recommendations that you're talking about. Any thoughts or
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right, especially when you're talking about the whole food versions of those foods. And so, just a little bit about myself, I'm from Southwest Georgia, right? I actually, before I moved out to my residency, I was probably eating between 2 and 3 pounds of chicken and beef per day because that's the only way that I knew how to get it because that was just culture. But now I live in one of the nation's blue zones, and I've really worked hard to shift to what I would consider is a whole food plant predominant dietary pattern, where I would say any given day, 90% of my nutrition is coming from whole food plants, mostly as far as any animal products. I just kind of protect that for reasons that we eat beyond health and nutrition. So socially. So if the guys want to go out to Korean barbecue after a strongman competition, that's probably a very important meal for me to have with them, right? Because of that social factor. It can certainly be a challenge if you are only focusing on those whole food plants, and it will be a lot of food. If you are someone that is trying to gain weight and you're getting only protein from plants, it's going to be very tough without
mm,
using a processed form because you're going to have to get very comfortable with your stomach being overly full because it takes a lot of fiber to get that amount of protein.
mm-hmm. What advice would you give to individuals who are trying to lose weight? So, people getting into their 40s, 50s, and above accumulated some excess fat, wanting to get rid of fat, and of course, the pro inflammatory visceral fat that's significantly harmful for metabolic health. But in that process, wanting to build muscle at the same time.
So I would say, right, focusing on those whole foods as a place to start. I don't think with very few exceptions, that any of us disagree that whole foods are the way to go in terms of health. And the nice part about focusing on those whole foods, you've only got so much room in your stomach to eat. So if you're trying to stay full, right, and you're really prioritizing those low caloric density, high nutrient density foods, you're going to be very full if you're focusing on that. At the end of the day, being full is what's going to lead to long-term weight loss, because if you're hungry all the time, evolution is very strong, right? That hunger signal is there for a reason. If you're starving, you're dying in nature. So it wants to protect itself, and eventually you will have to act on that hunger signal. But focusing on those whole foods, stretching that stomach out, it can be very helpful.
Any thought on importance of timing of protein intake when you're wanting to build muscle?
I think the data has shifted quite a lot on this. I mean, I think the bro science was very strong, probably 90s, early 2000s, where it's like, man, if you don't have your protein shake within 45 minutes of working out, you've missed your anabolic window. But when we look at kind of like the newer chrononutrition data, it probably seems like the thing that matters the most is that total daily protein. So the specific timing of when you eat, outside of how well it sits on your stomach when you're exercising, might not matter as much as what does the whole day look like in general.
That's great. That's great to know. Also allows people a little bit more margin of forgiveness when trying to plan out your day.
Absolutely.
If someone could focus on just one nutritional habit for overall metabolic health and, of course, building and maintaining muscle, what would your recommendation be?
I would say start with those whole foods, right? Make that the vast majority of the things that you eat, and we will automatically have health improvements. I mean, if 85% of what you ate come from whole food plants, most of chronic disease would go away. And I don't mean control, I mean remission of chronic disease.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the biggest mistake people make nutritionally when trying to build muscle?
Yeah, so that one's is pretty straightforward. I think people just don't commit to a single goal long enough. So especially, I mean, I'm thinking about the like classic younger guy that wants to bulk up. They just have to commit to gaining weight rather than kind of just going back and forth. I'm going to bulk, I'm going to cut. But being consistent with what you're doing for a period of time. And when you're at the end of that, have a period of weight maintenance and then go the other direction. Because I think changing your goals too much back and forth is just going to make the process harder.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Dr. Mock, for joining us. And for those of you listening, if you found value in today's episode or learned something new, please subscribe, leave a review, share this podcast with a friend. Your support helps us to continue to provide free content to empower you on your journey to better health. Again, this is Dr. Jamie Lewis, joined with Dr. Andrew Mock, reminding you that your body holds incredible potential to heal, thrive, and perform. Sometimes it just needs the right tools to act at your full potential. Live your best life now, and we'll see you next time.